Ladies and gents, Lightfall is launching, and with it, a ton of changes. Today, though, we consolidated the 20 biggest changes coming to Destiny 2 when Lightfall drops. So without further ado, let's get started. First, we've got Strand. This is a new damage type, the first since Stasis and Beyond Light, and its arrival brings a ton of content and potentially a ton of sandbox breaking. We'll see how it plays out. With Strand, though, will be new darkness subclasses for all three classes. Hunters will have the new Thread Runner. Now, the Thread is spike melee. There's actually a rope dart that ricochets off of enemies, and it refunds melee energy on hits and when you actually catch the knife on return. Sexy! Also, the Widow's Silk aspect gives an extra grenade charge and lets hunters make a fixed grapple point. The Ensnaring Slam aspect grants a quick fall like Shadow Dive that suspends nearby enemies, although it does consume your dodge. And their super is called Silk Strike, which is actually a roaming third-person super with an explosive light attack as well as a 360 AoE heavy attack. Dude, I said it in the live breakdown the other day, I'm not a hunter main, but seeing this in action, almost makes me want to try hunter on launch. Warlocks are getting the new Broodweaver. The Arcane Needle melee can be chained up to 3 times in a row, shooting a high damage tracking projectile. The Weaver's Call aspect creates 3 threadlings when casting a rift, and the Mind Spun Invocation aspect reacts to each of the 3 strand grenades in a unique way. The Grapple melee actually spawns 3 threadlings. You can even consume the threadling grenade to fill perched threadlings, and consume shackle grenades to gain a damage buff and suspend nearby enemies on kills. Long story short, Warlocks, you're literally gonna have a threadling army. Now, Titans, for better or for worse, we got the Berserker class. Now, I actually think it's gonna be pretty good. Despite everyone saying cross, it looks just like every other Titan super. But the Frenzy Blade melee is actually a 3-charge rapid hit attack that lunges at enemies and severs them. You've got the Into the Fray aspect, which grants Woven Mail to nearby allies when a tangle is destroyed and speeds up melee charge while Woven Mail is active. Woven Mail, by the way, grants you damage resist. Then you got Dringer's Lash, which creates a Kepri Horn style charge when a barricade is dropped that suspends enemies. And the Blade Fury super allows fast chaining melee attacks that increases in speed and builds energy for a heavy attack that suspends distant targets. Fellas, it's got some reach, man. Personally, I can't wait to use this inside of PvP. Now, I do want to talk about the grapple for just a second. Now, we've seen this in other games. This isn't nothing new, but Destiny is making its debut here alongside with Strand. All 3 classes, though, will be able to equip a grapple grenade to use this new ability. Now, you can grapple onto fixed grapple points or even tangles to refund some or all of your grapple grenade energy, and grapple melees can be triggered during or at the end of a grapple, causing explosions and severing of enemies. Players can even grapple onto any point in the world. You can hitch a ride on a sparrow or a ship or swing through buildings like Spider-Man. A lot of people are literally calling us Green Spider-Man, which, yeah, that's kind of what we are with this subclass. Now, Threadlings. These are actually small strand minions that seek enemies and explode on impact. All classes can actually use Threadling grenades to spawn 3 of these little guys. They're similar to that of like Colony projectiles, but green. And Warlocks can actually store 3 Threadlings by letting them purge on their body, releasing them against enemies later. Now, Strand is going to come with several new effects, also known as Strand verbs or keywords. Sever is actually going to be a debuff that reduces enemy damage output. Suspend lifts enemies off the ground, disabling them. That's right, guys. Inside of PvE, your enemies will be totally disabled. Even stationary enemies will get disabled. Now, inside of PvP, there is going to be that level of suspension. You can still fire, but Bungie says you can only shoot from the hip. Now, Unraveled enemies shoots out threads when attacked, damaging and unraveling nearby enemies. Tangles are these little balls of strand that can be picked up and even thrown. You can even grapple to them, and they explode with damage. These are pretty much a replacement to Warmind cells, but again, it's green here, and it has more utility with the whole grappling. By the way, Warmind cells are being removed from the game entirely. And Woven Mail is a new buff that reduces incoming damage. Granted, inside of PvP, this only reduces body shot damage, not headshot or melee damage. Needless to say, guys, Strand is really going to shake Destiny up. Number 2, new activity damage modifiers. Fellas, we are moving away from elemental burn modifiers. This has now been split into surges and threats. Surges increases the feature outgoing elemental damage by 25%, and you're actually going to have weekly surges and seasonal surges. The seasonal surge for this coming up season in Lightfall will be Strand, of course, and then Void and Solar will rotate. Now, threats increases the featured incoming elemental damage by 25%, which will also be on rotation. Now, overcharge weapons. These are actually featured weapons that deal 25% more damage on a rotation. These are weapons set by certain activities or weapons featured as champion counters on the seasonal artifact. Now, keep in mind, guys, overcharge and surges do not stack. However, kinetic weapons actually will get that 25% increase in damage if you use a surging subclass. Now, the activities that are being affected by this include Dares of Eternity, Nightmares, Wellspring, Vanguard Ops, Empire Hunts, campaign weekly missions. All of this will be getting surges, threats, and overcharge weapon weapon rotators. Now, number 3, new and updated fragments for Strand and existing subclasses. Guys, we're going to be getting a lot of different things here for Strand, but we're also getting stuff for our old subclasses. But starting with Strand fragments, we're getting the Thread of Ascent, where activating your grenade ability reloads your equipped weapons and grant increased weapon handling and airborne effectiveness for a short time. Thread of Fury, which states that damaging targets with a tangle grants melee energy. Thread of Finality, where finishers generate thread links. You can imagine how crazy this can get with certain builds. And Thread of Warding, where picking up an aura power grants woven mail. Now, new arc fragments are also coming in the game, including Spark of Instinct. When critically wounded, taking damage from nearby enemies emits a burst of damaging arc energy that jolts targets. This is definitely similar to the mod Reactive Pulse, which is a charged with light mod. We also have Spark of Haste, where you have greatly increased resilience, recovery, and mobility while sprinting. Again, pulling from mods here like Striking Light, which we're going to get into combat mods and builds here in just a moment. Solar fragments, though, that are being added includes Ember of Mercy. When you revive an ally, you and other nearby allies gain restoration. Picking up a fire sprite also grants restoration. You also have Ember of Resolve, where solar grenade final blows cure you. And new void fragments, such as Echo of Cessation, where finisher final blows create a burst of void damage that causes nearby enemies to become volatile. And defeating volatile targets creates a void breach. And Echo of Vigilance, where defeating a target when your shields are depleted grants you a temporary void overshield. Long story short, guys, Bungie is not just writing off our old subclasses. They too will be getting love with Lightfall alongside the inclusion of Strand. Now, change number 4, we are finally getting in-game loadout presets. This is a huge move, guys. In-game, you will be able to save your loadout. This will allow players to create fully customized configurations of their armors, weapons, and mods. Loadouts can also be hot swapped at any time and in any activity, unless of course loadouts are locked. This is kind of an issue with things like Destiny Item Manager, because when you get into an activity, it has issues with swapping out your gear. Now, the loadout UI is similar to that of the appearance customization screen, making it faster to review, screenshot, and even share complex builds. Granted, there's not going to be a way to actually share links, which is what made DIM so desirable. Now, players can unlock up to 10 loadouts per character by progressing through Guardian ranks. This means up to 30 in-game loadouts per account. Now, creating loadouts will pull items from a user's vault, but keep in mind, guys, it can't put things back in the vault. Not really sure what the issue is here. Personally, I'm still going to be using DIM when it comes to sharing loadouts with you, because it's just one click and go, and for just putting items back into my vault. With that being said, though, the ability to change loadouts, save them in-game, and equip them in any activity, that's huge. Now, number 5, Guardian ranks is the new account progression coming to Destiny, and it's actually supposed to make Destiny make more sense. Now, there's actually going to be 14 Guardian ranks for players to earn. Ranks 1 through 6 are permanent ranks that are meant to guide players through the early parts of the game, like moving from new light into rituals like Vanguard, Crucible, etc. Now, most experienced players will enter Lightfall at around Guardian rank 6, while new players will start around rank 1. This means rank 7 to 14 resets seasonally and are meant to showcase mastery of the game, making it easy to identify the best of the best. Now, these higher ranks are earned by completing in-game content and assisting other players throughout the game. Really hoping this is going to be a good system, guys, and we're going to learn exactly what these rank requirements are with the launch of Lightfall. Now, number 6, Commendations. Commendations, guys, are finally making its way into Destiny. We actually recommended we get a commendation system in the game, especially once LFG in-game goes live. This is a positive feedback system for Guardians after completing an activity. Now, we've seen commendation system in things like Overwatch, Final Fantasy XIV, and Realm Reborn. They're essentially just small shout-outs to players that you play with within a given activity. You got that guy that clutched up and saved the squad? Commend him. Or that person that went crazy and popped off with some insane DPS. Now, you're going to be able to commend players for their contributions. Now, the activity results screen is actually going to give a list of commendation options. Then it will play a little animation to celebrate. Now, this is part of Bungie's effort to strengthen collaboration between players and make it easier to identify the best people to play with. One of my favorite systems is actually in Final Fantasy XIV, where you can actually take points that you accumulate through commendations and spend it on gear. If Bungie really wants to incentivize people to be the best they can be in fire teams, then that's definitely a route I hope they go. Number 7, build crafting 4.0. Guys, this is the biggest change to armor mods in over 3 years. All armor mods are unlocked through Guardian ranks, fully unlocking for players that reach rank 6. Now, armor now has 1 slot for ability energy mods and 3 slots for other mods. That's right, guys, the artifact mod slot is gone. More on that in just a second. But playstyle mods like Charge with Light and Elemental Wells are being reworked and replaced with the new armor charge system. Now, ammunition mods now apply to weapons based on damage type instead of archetype. For example, instead of having to choose between Linear Fusion Finder and Shotgun Finder, you just essentially equip Arc Ammo Finder or Kinetic Ammo Finder. Now, some of Similar to Charge with Light, armor charge mods will allow charges to be stacked and spent based on what mods are equipped. Now we know that existing mods like Taking Charge, Stacks on Stacks, and Font of Wisdom have been updated for armor charge, but there should be plenty of new mods too. Now to help tie this all together, mod costs are being adjusted to generally cost a little bit less, with a few exceptions, like Resilience, which is actually going to cost more. Also, Elemental Affinity for armor is being removed, making it easier to combine different mods for new build possibilities. Now Bungie states that not all current meta builds will be possible in the new build crafting system, but they believe that this new flexibility will more than make up for the potential loss. Now Artifice armor from Master Dungeons will get a bonus mod slot that adds 3 additional points to a character's stats at no extra cost. This does apply retroactively to all Artifice armor that you've already unlocked. Now the last trial before Lightfall actually lists all the artifact mods coming in Season Defiance alongside the Ascendant Scepter, and guys, they are wild. For a quick taste, new authorized mods make elemental mods cheaper. Volatile Flow gives volatile rounds on orb power pickup. Medieval Champion turns glaives and swords into anti-champion overcharged monsters. And guys, it even gets crazier. If you haven't checked out our TWAB video, that'll be linked in the description below. Now number 8, elemental wells are being changed to elemental objects. That's right guys, instead of balancing elemental wells with existing objects like stasis shards and ionic traces, all elements will have their own unique objects. So for Arc, it's ionic traces. For stasis, it's shards. For solar, it's fire sprites. For void, it will be void breaches. And for strand, it will be tangles. Now spawning these objects will be tied to the subclass options like fragments and aspects. And picking up an elemental object will grant ability energy or have other effects depending on your build. Now Bungie says the number of interactions like this will be limited at launch, but we intend to add to this system moving forward. Now number 9, seasonal artifact mods are being changed into unlockable artifact perks. This is a big change, especially for my veteran players that are so used to slotting these on. This is actually why armor is losing the artifact slots. We don't need it. Unlocking artifact perks will work just like it does now, and resetting the artifact will have 0 cost. Unlocking an artifact perk will activate it, applying its effects to your character until you reset the artifact. Now to keep this from being too OP, players are still limited to 12 active perks at a time, which is still a lot. But the main takeaway, guys, is as soon as you unlock, say for instance, anti-barrier scouts, every time you actually put on a scout rifle, it automatically applies. Now number 10, weapon crafting changes are looking to get more simple and more fun. First up, Deep Sight Resonance will only apply to weapons that can be crafted. No more useless red border weapons. Second, resonant elements are being removed from the game, which is why I hope you spent them all before Lightfall actually launched. Now shaping and reshaping weapons will only require standard currencies like Glimmer, Enhancement Cores, etc. So no more hoarding red border weapons in your vault to stock up on materials. Now Ascendant alloys will remain in the game, but resonant and harmonic alloys are looking to be removed later this year. Essentially guys, as you see from all of this, there's a major consolidation coming into weapon crafting, and it actually started in Witch Queen, but every season, including the launch of Lightfall, has continued to consolidate and make weapon crafting more simple. Now deep sight attunement objectives are also being removed. Essentially guys, you get your red borders and you call it a day. Fantastic changes here. Number 11, Vanguard playlists are actually getting some much needed love. Old strikes are getting remastered to keep up with Destiny 2's evolution. Strikes like Lake of Shadows and the Arms Dealer are being fully reworked in Season 20 with new encounters and higher difficulty. Now the Inverted Spire and Exodus will get this treatment later, but for now, they're not going to be showing up in the Nightfall rotation. Hands down though, I love to see these old strikes being reworked. They're classics. They shouldn't just be left in the dust. And considering how much stronger we are in comparison to what we were in D2 vanilla, these strikes need it, man. Now Psyop Battlegrounds and Heist Battlegrounds are also being added to the Vanguard Ops. Battlegrounds are going to enter the Nightfall rotation, starting with Mars Heist Battleground this season. And strike scoring finally returns in Vanguard Ops. Now just like in Nightfalls, you actually earn points for killing enemies and other events. Precision kills, picking up orbs, reviving teammates, etc. with the multiplier based on the specific strike. Now the higher your score, the larger your Vanguard rank multiplier will be. You can actually get a one-time multiplier on Vanguard ranks earned for getting below 30,000 points. The multiplier increases every 5,000 points after the initial 30,000, giving us the largest multiplier available at 7 times for getting over 250,000 points. This actually applies to all Vanguard modes, including Nightfalls. On top of that, Pinnacle rewards for Ops are tied to the seasonal and weekly surge modifiers, and Pinnacle rewards for Nightfalls now require 250,000 points total across multiple Nightfall clears. You can actually get the score in a single GM run, but you can even run a lower level Nightfall multiple times until your scores add up. Overall, guys, fantastic changes here to the Vanguard playlist. Now, number 12, Crucible might finally get the attention it deserves, sort of. Now, Countdown, which is a classic bomb planting style objective aspect of game mode is returning to Destiny. And there's actually a fast spawn 2-bomb variant of the mode called Countdown Rush, which will be added too. Also, a mode called Checkmate Control, which will essentially be added in the game, is going to be a variant of Control in which ability cooldowns and ammo spawns are dramatically changed. So essentially think like the opposite of Mayhem, featuring reduced uptime and more focus on gunplay. Now we're also looking at matchmaking algorithms changing. Again, everything sounds good in theory, but it's Bungie's own dynamic skill range system. But this is going to be adjusted to further promote better connection quality in PvP, or supposed to. Now, new maps are coming seasonally, or quote unquote new maps, but this won't begin until after Season of Defiance. So essentially the new modes and backend fixes will have to hold us over for now. Now the competitive division is actually going to get some map and mode weighting changes. Rift and Showdown game modes should only show up about 30% of the time combined, but favorite maps like Javelin, Endless Veil, Ultra Flame will show up more often, while Disjunction and Cathedral of Dust are getting removed. Now exotic armor switching is also getting a major hit in things like Trials of Osiris. The competitive division, there's actually going to be a new modifier called Not Swap, which will remove all ability energy when exotic armor is changed mid-game. So similar to what happens when you try to change a subclass. Now the goal here is to keep people from fast swapping, considering we're literally going to have loadouts that we can save in-game with our loadout system, and Bungie's already stated that we can actually swap loadouts on the go in activities. So this is obviously a means to combat that. Now all these changes restore Crucible to its former glory. Personally guys, I think Crucible is going to be very chaotic once Strand hits. It's just the nature of things. Every time new subclasses have rolled out, whether it's the Taken King, Forsaken, Beyond Light, all of these classes were way too hot, and Bungie usually intentionally does that. So in my opinion, I think Crucible is still going to be pretty chaotic this season, but I would assume Season of Defiance is really going to put Crucible as well as Trials in focus more. Now number 13, exotic missions are coming back. That's right guys, there is going to be an exotic mission rotator, which will be introduced to make classic quests available for everyone to replay. The rotator will actually feature the fan favorite missions, which will include Presage and Operation Seraph Shield. Now new exotic missions will also be added throughout the year of Lightfall, and more legacy missions will be added to the rotator starting in Season 22. Ideally, things like the Whisper mission, Outbreak mission, such fantastic missions that really should have never been removed from the game, but here we are. Hopefully they make a return though in these rotators with some incentive to do them, but even if it's just for the experience, I think it's worth bringing back in the game. Now number 14, Destiny 2 is getting harder, pretty much across the board guys. Destiny and Lightfall is going to be a harder experience. Now keep in mind, we have become much stronger over the years, so Bungie is essentially elevating difficulty across the board, especially in our Vanguard activities. These will feature power caps that lock players at a difficulty for which they cannot overlevel. So Hero will actually put you at a -5 power level. Legend will be -15. Master, which includes raids and dungeons, will be -20. Now this is a significant change. We're talking Master raids and dungeons being substantially harder and remaining hard throughout an entire season. There is no, oh, I'll come back and tackle those things when it's easier, once my level is on par. No, that's not the case. It's going to be difficult all the way through. Now Grandmasters will still stay at -25. Personally, I think Grandmasters are pretty much going to be the same level of difficulty as they are now, but the areas that these changes affect the most is definitely on the lower end up to Master. Now these power deltas will apply to Master raids, Lost Sectors, which you're actually going to be over leveled for Lost Sectors, Master dungeons, Stairs of Eternity, Wellspring, Nightmare and Empire hunts, and weekly campaign missions. Now power deltas will be applied in combination with Surge, Threat, and Overcharge modifiers to incentivize build crafting and keeping multiple runs feeling fresh. Again, we have an entire video going over builds for next season, and in that video guys, I highly advise seeking out builds going into Lightfall. They're going to be very much important, if not necessary, for certain content. Now with that being said, match game is being removed, but elemental shields across the whole game will now resist 50% of non-matching damage. Now this sounds bad, but Bungie is increasing the rewards, more specifically for the Vanguard Ops playlist. So that's kind of like the catch there. It's like, okay, more difficulty, but more rewarding. Now number 15, we are going to have new ways to earn exotic gear, and this is besides just Lost Sector. Now we don't have a ton of details on this, but exotic armor chasing appears to be moving from like Lost Sectors back into the core rituals, such as the Vanguard, Crucible, and Gambit. Now it does seem like exotic Ingrams will still drop, as Bungie stated they will continue to monitor Lost Sector exotic drop rates after these changes go live, but they're trying to drive excitement back into seeing that exotic Ingram dropping in the wild, outside of you just farming a Lost Sector over and over. Granted, Lost Sector does give you a more direct path in farming for say, leg armor pieces, or arms, or helmets, which does remove some of the RNG out of exotic drops. Now moving on to number 16, champion stun tools are getting bigger and a lot better. All champions can now be stunned by certain elemental effects and keywords. So for barrier champions, you can actually stun them with volatile rounds, radiance, and unravel. Overloads can be stunned by jolts, suppress, and slow, and unstoppables can be stunned by blinding, which is just tied to Arc 3.0. Blinding grenades are actually being converted into disorienting grenades, so you won't be able to actually stun with a grenade launcher that used to have blinding grenades. Freeze and Shatter can also stun unstoppables, ignitions, and suspend. Now, stuns from elemental effects can be triggered from anywhere, abilities or weapon perks. Major changes here, fellas. We have never had our subclasses actually combat champions in any way. So the fact that they're actually being split here, this is going to change what you use, especially in things like Grandmaster Nightfalls, right? Now, number 17, kinetic weapons are getting a big buff, and I mean massive. Now, primary weapons are getting a 1.1 damage buff over their elemental counterparts, but kinetic special weapons are actually getting a 1.15 damage buff over their elemental counterparts. Now, keep in mind, this does not mean stasis or strand weapons will share in this. This is just for kinetic weapons. Bungie's trying to give a reason for us to rock kinetics over other elemental weapons. Now, kinetic weapons are also getting a unique kinetic damage type perk, similar to Solar's Incandescent or Arc's Volt Shots. Now, to just kind of run through a list of kinetic weapons that I'm going to be using next season that will be taking advantage of these buffs include Izanagi's Burden, Witherhoard, Arbalest, Malfeasance, the Deep Stone Crypt Sniper Rifle, Succession, hell, even Silicon Neuroma, which you can get as an Adept and you can get it with Firing Line, Heritage, Defiance of Yasmin, Wastelander, Malicious Birthright, Ragnahil, Pardon Our Dust, Huckleberry, Dead Man's Tale. Now, DMT is actually a very interesting one because it just got rebuffed back inside of PvE. On top of that, it has Vorpal, so yes, it's looking pretty juicy. We have a ton of kinetic primaries that are going to be very good, and we'll literally be here all day long if we jump into every single one of them, but I am curious to try all of these out. Osteostriga, Outbreak, hell, Wishender has been putting out, especially considering it has intrinsic anti-barrier. So again, guys, kinetics are going to be doing a lot more damage, and primarily kinetic special weapons. Everybody was really upset about the nerf to Witherhoard. This buff to kinetics, though, pretty much brings Witherhoard back into parity. Now, number 18, Adept weapons are getting enhanced perks. This is exactly why Master Raids are getting harder. In a mid-season patch, Lightfall Raid Adept weapons are going to be receiving a new mod that will allow them to be enhanced and slot mementos, similar to that of crafted weapons. Now, this is actually broken up into different enhancement tiers. Enhancement tier 1 replaces the existing masterwork. It also grants an enhanced intrinsic, weapon level, and first enhanced timestamp, as well as a memento socket. Now, keep in mind, this is just for raid adepts only. This is kind of a trial thing with Bungie, but it allows full selection over the barrel and magazine perks, and these perks are individually gated by level, pretty much the same as crafted weapons. Now, enhancement tier 2, which unlocks at level 11, allows enhancing of the left column trait perk, and enhancement tier 3, which is level 17, allows enhancement of the right column trait perk. Now, this system will eventually include more weapons across the game, but this will be a mid-season change. The goal of this, guys, is so that when you get an adept weapon to drop inside of those master raids or wherever, and it happens to be a very juicy weapon, instead of you going, I need to get 3 deep sights of this, instead we're going to have the ability to apply this mod and enhance the role that we have. Now, what you do lose is the ability to fully customize the weapon. As in, if you got a role that came with Outlaw and Kill Clip, you can't suddenly run out there and put Rampage and Surplus on it. It's only the traits that are on the weapon when it drops that you can enhance on that adept. So in some ways, this puts the looter back in looter shooter, while simultaneously still keeping craftable weapons very desirable, very valuable in its ability to be fully customizable. Now, number 19, ability cooldown adjustments. Bungie agrees that the balance of weapon and ability usage after the 30th anniversary tuning patch met their goals. They actually want Destiny PvP to return to this state. And some would even say this was the golden era of Crucible. Now, as a result, they have rescaled the efficacy of discipline, strength, and each class ability stat on grenade, melee, and class ability regeneration rates. In general, the regeneration provided by a tier 10 stat will roughly be equivalent to a tier 8 in the previous system. Each stat tier now provides a more consistent gain in cooldown reduction rather than spiking heavily at the lower tiers. Now, in Lightfall, Bungie will be adjusting the base cooldowns of some grenades, melee, and class abilities. They're going to provide more detailed information in the patch notes when Lightfall actually goes live, but Hunter dodge cooldowns have been reverted from their Season 19 nerf. So Marksman dodge base cooldown will be reduced from 34 seconds to 29 seconds, and Gambler's dodge base cooldown is being reduced from 46 seconds to 38 seconds. Again, it's hard to say what everything is going to look like until we get the patch notes in front of us, but again, Bungie's trying to move away from the high uptime and ability usage, and this is not just a PvP thing. Like, literally, they've talked about it. They don't like that we're spamming storm grenades and different neutral game builds over and over inside of PvE. They want a good split between gunplay and ability usage. Now, the final change here at number 20. This is the thick one, fellas. Weapon focusing changes. Umbra Ingrams are being removed from the game entirely. Now, vendor track Ingrams can now be claimed or focused directly from the track and no longer need to take up inventory space. Now, this is very similar to what Shaxx does was and what we have with the Crucible. Now, Adept and Legacy weapons can also be focused, making it easier to chase down those God Rolls or Sunset weapons. Now, as a result, weapon focusing costs have been adjusted across the board, and those Adepts and Legacy weapons are going to cost a little more. Now, Bungie's Economy Update article has a huge breakdown of these costs and all the returning weapons. This means weapons like the Hothead, Plug 1, Reese Walker, Peace Bond, Shayura's Wrath, Reed's Regrets, and a ton more can be focused. Now, there's an entire list of so many things coming back. The only downside to all of this is that the cost is pretty hefty. I'm curious to know if Bungie's going to back off on this. What this will incentivize, though, especially when it comes to getting Ingrams, guys, every time a double and triple reputation boost comes around for whatever activity that you're trying to farm Ingrams through, you definitely want to take advantage of this. So guys, there you go. Those are our 20 changes coming to Destiny 2 Lightfall. There is so many more than just this, but these were the biggest ones jumping out to us that we wanted to consolidate for you and share with you if you just needed to get up to speed before launch this week. Now, if you want to experience Lightfall with us, feel free to come by our stream. We'll be streaming lore videos on Monday, and then we'll be streaming Lightfall all day Tuesday. So come join us. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.